Shack. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursue.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv. Thank you guys for all tuning in, and make sure you check out our website, theantimedia.org. I'm also joined on the line here with my co-host DB Schwazy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing just fine, Nick. Just waiting for something to happen in Ferguson, and also starting to see the police state unroll into a new dystopian kind of pre-thought, pre-crime nightmare. We thought with this freaking guy from our neighborhood, Tiny Do, a.k.a. Brandon Duncan. I mean, maybe we can start off with that. Maybe you got something else in mind, but that whole thing in Ferguson is tied to this too. If you just so much as associate with an enemy of the state, you're an enemy of the state.
Yeah, man, that's what they're basically saying with this guy. I mean, this is absolutely an insane story. So this rapper Tiny Do, apparently he's being charged simply because his rap album started selling more records because a gang that he's affiliated with started killing people. And even though he's not even being accused or suspected of committing any of these crimes, they're basically saying that because he profited in one way or another from what these gang members did, and they killed like 9 people or something like that, then they're trying to say that it's basically he can be implicated in this crime. And like you were saying, man, this is like a complete violation of the First Amendment, freedom of speech. I mean, It truly is turning things into thought crime. I mean, it's
well, where
crazy.
does it end? They can take your assets just for thinking something. That's why you dare not drive anywhere across state lines with a lot of cash anymore, even in the U.S. And now they're going to, look at your social media. They're going to look at anything and everything you do, because anything and everything you do, especially on the internet, it's fair game. And don't think they won't take audio and video recordings off your smartphone at some point if you do something to implicate yourself. And this is the beginning of it. This is because this guy is an easy target. There's 90% of people don't really see this guy as somebody that they can sympathize with. Oh, he's a gangbanger, he's a rapper, blah, 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 blah. Well, it starts here, and then it goes to you ran a red light. That's attempted murder. That's 15 years in jail. It's going to be a slippery slope and something stupid that'll start just like something from this.
Yeah, and when did they say they passed this law? Back in like 2000 or something, right? So this law is like 14 years old, and this is the first time that they're able to invoke it against somebody, or at least they're going to try to. And it's like you would think this is like the worst time possible to try to invoke this kind of law, considering the amount of anti-police fervor that's going on all over the place right now. I mean, why in the world would they try to do this now? It's insane. Unless they're just
like
they're trying
Ferguson,
to they're trying to inflame make the
Exactly.
situation inflamed. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. It's not going to work down here. We're, Nick, me and you've lived here our whole lives, and we're a port town, transient city, and people here are not by any means separated by, race. If there's anybody I know that sees race of my own generation, it's a rare thing, and that's what they're going to try to do. But they picked a really bad place. Ferguson makes sense. There's still a division there, but here, what this is going to do is really galvanize people. I mean, you got to think, if this guy actually does any time for this, there's going to have to be a citizen uprising, because what's going to happen if they just arbitrarily decide to charge anybody for any reason?
Yeah, man, this is thought crime, and it's just, I can't see this going any further. But then again, the guy's going to trial, So, there's a chance that he can get charged for this, So they're going to tie up trial for who knows how long and see where this goes. But I guess if there's enough public support for this guy, they may change their mind and decide not to charge him. Because as of right now, if they're able to interpret this law in this way, this guy's going to do time. There's a possibility that he could face up to life in prison for making a rap album that gained notoriety because other people killed people. This is crazy. This is just another step in the thought police direction, and it's something that we can't really put up with at all, because this is like you said, you enter into this idea. And I've read some stories about other places doing it. I think in Chicago and stuff, not the same way, but pre-policing and stuff like that. It's not. It's where they can use all this infrastructure and all this technology, the NSA and all this stuff against us, and they could use it on us for this thought crime, and that basically implicate anybody. Anybody they want. This is like this is J. Edgar Hoover's wet dream, basically. And, it's just horrible any way you cut it. We're joined now by Manny, too. What's going on, Manny?
Hey, just joining you guys earlier here. I'm glad you started to talk about that first, because we got another conference going on. I'm monitoring Guerrero, but I'm also monitoring Ferguson. I sent you a text message, Nick, letting you know about our Ustreamer just got arrested. That's ridiculous. When a Ustreamer starts getting arrested just for, talking and filming what he needs to be filming, it's ridiculous, stuff like that, Luckily, we have another Ustreamer that's out there, too, and stuff like that. Hopefully he won't, get, hit by the camera. He's just blacked out completely. It's just crazy and stuff like that, when people are getting too powerful out there against the government, and so it's pretty soon you're going to hear it's going to be against the law to be Mexican in California, and so you might see Manny being charged with something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, definitely. They're arresting journalists like left and right. Now, was this journalist arrested out in where was this at, in L.A. or in Ferguson?
No, that happened in Ferguson and stuff like that. His name is Bazam Marie. I send you a text on it and stuff like that. Luckily, we got this guy out there, Revolutionary C out there, still broadcasting live. It's so powerful, the speech that this guy was making. He's an OG that's been a minister for 48 years, and he's lived in Ferguson, and he's basically on live, Ustreaming. He's telling these cops, if you're not from Ferguson, get out of my town. This is my town. If you're not a cop from Ferguson, get out of my town, and stuff like that. So that's a very powerful message,
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it doesn't look like many of the cops that are there are residents of Ferguson by any means, and I'm watching it live too, and they're using the sound cannons just nonstop, but at this point people aren't even really caring. But there's only 30, 40 people out there, and I would say this is the beginning of, if anything, like a youth anarchist type movement, because they're like, hey, if we're supposedly the land of the free and all this BS propaganda is actually true or not, we're not just going to allow this to happen. We're at least going to film you and show just how heavy-handed you are. And they got full riot gear, man. There's nobody out there for them to contest, and they're still fully geared up.
Exactly, DD, and stuff. You know what's so sad though, that these people are away from the cops. They're not. I mean, they're not, threatening them in any way. And these cops are just so afraid. I mean, it's amazing how these guys start putting their hands down on their weapons. I mean, they're so afraid because they know what's going to happen. I personally told my contact up there in Oregon right now that I personally think the verdict's in already. I personally think they're going to wait till they catch us off guard and basically the verdict will come not guilty, obviously, but I think they'll do it around Thanksgiving. I think that's what the machine's going to be doing,
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. They depending on how this thing plays out, we'll know if it's played out a certain way. We'll know that they're trying to provoke it. If it's played out another way, they're trying to downplay it. You know what I mean? So, by judging by that, we can kind of figure out what's going on with the whole Ferguson thing. And I do have an update. We may get a call from Cassandra Rules a little bit later from live in Ferguson as well, but I think she's probably at the protest that you guys are looking at on live stream. And what she said is that she was headed to the Ferguson PD, 65 plus officers and a helicopter, and there's roughly 35 demonstrators. So yeah, she's basically saying the cops right now are outnumbering the protesters, and that they're using helicopters on this group of 35, which is absolutely just overbearing, man. And now they're arresting journalists already. I mean, this is crazy, dude. I mean, this is this is like this is the early stages of people starting to really stand up to stuff, man. And the way that the state is overreacting, it just goes to show how insecure these guys really are, because their system is so fragile. It is based on this, it's strictly based on ideas, man. I mean, the whole, like the saying goes, the fiat currency is basically based on confidence, right? So the only reason the dollar has any kind of value is because people believe in it. And people believe that it has value because it's not actually backed by anything except for maybe the might of the U.S. military. When that's a whole other story. But the thing is that it's so scary for them to put up with any kind of little bit of dissent, because the system is so fragile and because it is just based on these fragile ideas. And by all means, a lot of these ideas are pretty bad ideas, like central banking and fiat currency and the banks basically owning the Fed, which basically means the government's completely at will to the banks. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible idea. So these guys are defending it with a huge brute force, and it just goes to show how close we really are getting to making a breakthrough, I think. And they're just getting really scared. They see the polling numbers. They have all the inside information from all the polling, and they know the pulse on the street. And these guys are really scared. I think that's what it seems to me.
Well, I think that's happening, like in the same thing in Mexico and stuff like that, And so I just wanted to bring it up before I get off the phone and back to the conference down here in Oregon with my contacts. And just want to say this. I want to say a shout out to San Diego State for. I'm going to be going your way for 2 days down there to support my people down there by the border. San Diego State, there's going to be a big march, for the state of Guerrero, also at City College tomorrow. So I'm going to be down your way for 2 days. Hopefully I'll bump into you, Nick, and stuff like that. But I also want to say a lot of love from your Mocha brother down here in Hollywood, California, to you, Nick, and to you, DB Church, too. Thank you for really caring about the people and doing this show and stuff like that. I appreciate it, and I'm very moved by what you guys are doing. So thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for calling in, man. We'll catch you next show.
All right. See you, Nick.
So another thing to keep in mind, too, is that tomorrow there is, at least probably all over the Southwest and then down in Mexico, but for sure here in San Diego, there's about 3 of them going on because it's pretty big out here, because there's a lot of people that have family down there and that have immigrated from Mexico. But the Justice for Ayotzinapa protests are happening all over in San Diego. I think at 5:30 at the Mexican consulate down in Little Italy, and I don't know. They're probably happening in a lot of places, in fact. And people should get out there and support, man, because these are the kind of people you want to network with. These are the people that, are organizing to make things better. just like they're doing in Ferguson. I've been seeing a lot of content about the training and stuff that's going on down there. I mean, these guys are learning the peaceful tactics. I think I'm trying to remember the phrase they use. Militant, nonviolent civil disobedience is what the term that was used in a lot of this training and stuff. And that's really what Martin Luther King did, man. It was very militant, and in the way that activism can be militant, we're not causing violence or anything like that. It's about radical civil disobedience, man, to really call out the state, and that's what it's all about. And if the people can remain peaceful, just like they are tonight at the police department, and then you got the state arresting journalists, you got helicopters being called out, you got 2-to-1 ratio of officers to protesters. I mean, this is how we expose the state for what it is. A giant, monolithic system of force, really. It's basically what the state has become, just nothing more than a system of force, and uses a lot of tactics to keep itself relevant, So I think there's just lessons to be learned here all the time. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that the governor, Jay Nixon, this guy is already enacted the sorry. He already enacted a declaration of emergency, basically, and has called up the National Guard. And this is another step in the wrong direction. This is a reduction of rights. This is an invasion of liberties, more or less, right? But see, it goes to show how scared these people are. And if we can make them look scared, while at the same time making them look aggressive in the face of peaceful protesters, I mean, this is the message that is going to start, a larger movement that sooner or later will become the movement that really makes some change, or at least adding to all these other movements that are already existing. I mean, there's so many people out there for so many different causes, and all it takes is for them to all kind of get back, coalesce around certain ideas and certain messages, so that we can build this into a legitimate majority, and we're close. Because right now, the problem is we're being dictated by a what was the word that you used, DB, in the last show? But basically, it's a super minority that we're being dealt with right now, and these guys are the ones calling the shots, and I guess in an oligarchy, you're going to run into these problems where you got everybody thinking that their voice matters because there's such thing as a vote, and then you got only a small percentage of people actually turning out to vote, which in the midterm elections that just passed was something like 30%, and then you got to remember that only half of those people vote for one political party. 40% vote for one political party, 40% vote for another political party, and then 10% vote independent or whatever. So basically, all you have is 40% of the 30% of when it comes to,
and only half of them.
Yeah, and then that's only what it comes to electing these people, and then once those people are elected, that means the 30% of 40%, or the 40% of 30%, elects these guys, which only amounts to 500 or so people, 600 people, that call all the shots for everybody else. I mean, this is a tyranny of a... I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, this is a tiny bit of people calling the shots for everybody else, and so this is where a lot of the issues really come from, right? So what can we do to change that? Well, I mean, we need a lot more direct action like what's going on in Ferguson, and really pressuring these people because, they just don't listen, man. And even if we had an 85% turnout, even if we had a huge amount of people that came out and voted, even then, we're still only electing a handful of people.
And how does Europe deal with it? Because they're infinitely more diverse because their borders are porous, way more open than we are. And they've been around forever. We've only been around for, 250 years or so. So the thing is, you have to have more than a two-party system. They have 10 parties. Sure, do things take forever to get done? Yeah, they can. But then when they try to pull things like kill austerity measures and everything, these people come out in the millions and stop it. They just do. The politicians cannot make changes for their benefit, for the crony capitalist benefit. It just doesn't work. It's controlled socialism, and it works because you have an educated population. Now, how do we make that happen here? How do we Europeanize the U.S. and not do it in the destructive way that they're trying to do right now, which is force-feeding a communist-type system on us just simply because we have 300 million people? And I guess there's two solutions. We can make a new Constitution 2.0, have a Magna Carta 2.0, and then get out of this oligarchical system, which seems like it would take a revolution or at least some kind of intellectual revolt. The second one, which seems like it may even be kind of going that way anyway, is break us up into 3 or 4 countries and have a military alliance. I have no idea what that would do to the world, but it seems like it might happen.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's just so many things going down, dude, and such few people in control of it. I think the only way out of this horrible situation is through direct action, because going to the polls and all that stuff, I mean, yeah, that's could be helpful in some ways, possibly, but this is all stuff that's takes years and years down the line, and like you were saying, in Europe, they have 10 political parties, and it takes a while for stuff to get done. But in all honesty, man, to me, it's like the more the government is in deadlock, the better, because the only thing the government ever actually accomplishes normally is destructive things. I mean, what was the last thing that they all got together and did? Well, that was to start up a new war. I mean, that was the last time they ever agreed on anything.
Yeah, the only thing they've done positive was the New Deal. And we need another New Deal. And are we going to get it? No, because the elites don't want to put money into a country they consider dying, and it's a husk, and it's on its way down, and the East is going to really supplant us. That's how they see us. We're a skeleton. So it's up to the people that live here, honestly, this last generation, before they pretty much take the whole control grid over. If you want to survive as this culture, because they completely anticipate it failing, and that's obvious, by the way, they have $2 or $3 trillion of taxable income offshore, and nobody's going and getting that money, which would completely revitalize our entire infrastructure, our entire economy, and fix all of our problems, and they're not going to do it. So if the people aren't going to fight for this country, the elites have already given up on it. It's very, very obvious to me. And if we don't get something going soon, what's to say they don't just give up altogether?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think a lot of it is just because our morale is so low. You know, people have been beaten into the ground. They've been fed this crap on TV. Like that that Jim Carrey thing that he did on Jimmy Kimmel, where he's talking about the Illuminati, and it was such a joke. But a lot of what he said, man, and I know he was joking about the whole thing and being sarcastic, but I mean, people work so much, man, and spend working in this hamster wheel that's been set up by this fiat system, basically, where nobody can ever get ahead unless you get way ahead, and then after that you're never coming back down.
So you got to stay in school till you're a PhD or a master's degree or something. I don't know. We don't need people at Burger King, and we don't all these jobs should be being automated, and then society saying, well, now you have to go back to school and keep going until you're good enough to go back into the workforce. And that's paid for, and all your basic necessities are paid for, but you don't have any cash in your wallet until you actually work. But we'll keep paying for you to go to school. It's going to have to get to that point. We can't even employ the people now. We have people doing jobs that there's no need for a bank teller. There's not even a need for a guy to drive the trash truck anymore. It could all be automated using GPS on the trash cans. So that's where we need to push it, because their solution is going to be war and disease and poverty and starvation, simply because they're not going to give us any of their, hard-earned gains. It's not going to happen. But how do we make it so it can? Well, before we can be completely conquered by some kind of Skynet craziness in 20 or 30 years, we can force the government simply by recalling and doing all this other stuff as much as we can to, like I said, Europeanize us, give us free health care and free college. And I mean, it's single payer and there's no bill. Just make it a priority, because otherwise what's going to happen? We're going to be a third world country with the strongest military in the world. That's a frightening idea.
Yeah, I mean, the whole automation thing is coming along pretty quickly, and a lot of people are worried about it and stuff, because it is going to radically reshape the economy, same way the internet did, but even more. And the whole, robots taking over a lot of the manual tasks and stuff like that, that's going to happen, man. And it's already happening, in fact. And
a decade at most, right? From the way we're seeing it, like self-driving cars are going to come online in 5 years, and they're going to automate everything they can in a decade. And we got to set it up. We got to have, if we're going to have a peaceful, non-compliant revolution here of people that are intellectuals, that are young, that understand the future they have if they don't have a PhD, let alone your bachelor's, your master's. If you're not an expert in something, what are you going to be able to do? You can't compete with robots and AI. So it's going to have to be, like we've said forever, Pavlovian or whatever socialism. Everybody gets all their necessities provided for because it's cheap. All that stuff's cheap. You can 3D print a house for like $5,000. Everybody gets what they need to survive. But if you want luxuries, you're going to have to provide worth to the economy that's going to be all really high tech for the most part. And that's just what's going to happen. But that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I mean, you know me, dude. I'm not a believer in government institutions, man. And I think we have to make sure that whenever we, like, the thing that we have to do, I think really the most, is build our way out of what we have now, and going about that in like a community-based, voluntary way, where we're not so reliant on these, government institutions and stuff like that. Whether we're talking about switching over to like Bitcoin-based currencies, counter currencies, CSAs, like we talked about in the last show, which is community-supported agriculture. Community currencies, community trading, swap meets, and all that stuff.
But how do we appropriate raw material and technology in order to provide a competing infrastructure of sorts? We don't need to live like kings, but if people don't want to be part of the whole thing and just want to go out somewhere and 3D print a house and solar panel it up, earth ship it, and start their own community, how does that land become appropriate under eminent domain? Do we need 50,000 signatures to go get 50 square miles? I mean, how do we go about becoming an enclave inside of another country, an autonomous zone? It becomes really tricky.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to this. We talked about this months ago, about how the U.S. federal government owns and controls basically 650 million acres of land, which is enough for 2+ acres for each and every citizen. It could be delegated by finding people. Everybody that doesn't own property gets to get a piece of land or whatever. Kind of thing we do. There's 650 million acres sitting out there that are just being controlled by the government or on military bases or, whatever.
Random lottery, everyone over 18 gets 2 acres, something like that would be cool.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the whole Bundy Ranch thing was all about, because, this land that the dude was on was land where he grazed his cattle, and then it became federal land through some kind of deal. And he wanted to keep his animals on that land. Well, if you look at that Bundy Ranch thing, I think in a way it really set a precedent, dude. I think we could actually go out and start taking federal land, bro. Because if you look at what happened in Bundy Ranch, I mean, that's your reference right there. They didn't kick the guy off the land, and technically he was on federal land. You know what I mean? So I think that people can start going right now and just redelegating land that's federal,
Right.
as long as you do it, as long as you're not going and grabbing up 100 and 200
Right.
acres.
Well, don't I have already money like waiting for me in my own trust as part of my like social security number? Because I have like a banknote of fiat currency attached to me. And I think some guy like used that to help his bankruptcy be kind of negated, and he found out he had 143 million, U.S. Federal Reserve notes attached to his lifetime collateral or something weird like that. Can I just use that to just get federal land? I mean, it's all in the same kind of context of things. That would be something to look into.
Yeah, you talking about trading in your Social Security because knowing damn well that you and me are never going to benefit from that thing?
Absolutely. I want to trade in my Social Security for 10 acres.
There you go, man. That's actually a pretty good idea. Because, for us and the people listening and stuff, millennials or younger people, older people, I mean, even people that are in their 50s are probably not going to get their full benefits from Social Security. And Social Security is known for ripping people off. And then it's also known for massive waste and fraud too. But at the same time, the people that actually need it have like a really hard time getting it and all that stuff. So
it's got to be like I get land rights too. They can't come in and eminent domain me. Like I can do whatever I want and drill down and frack my own 10 acres and do everything I want with it.
Yeah, I mean, why not, dude? I think it's time that we start doing this kind of stuff. I mean, this could be the next civil disobedience, bro. We just start going out in groups and like taking land back, dude, because it's all out there. I mean, technically, it's all ours because it's the federal government, and supposedly we own the government, right? Which is kind of a not a true statement, but still, we can use these well-known societal norms against them. And say, hey, if we own the government, we might as well get the land back.
Yeah, my person owns the government.
If you want to tell us that we're in control of the government, then I'm gonna say, okay, well, let me get that back then.
Exactly. I want to collateralize my personhood for some real estate.
See, here in Chula Vista, where I'm at, they basically privatized the whole bayfront right here, which was being bought up by the government for a long time, by the local government, and they've basically bought like I forget how big it is, but it's like a couple hundred acres of this prime bayfront property with like harbor access and all this stuff. And now they're basically, now that they've bought all this land on tax dollars, on taxpayer dollars, now they're privatizing it and selling it off to these investors, many of which are from China, and they're going to turn it over into to these corporations. And our local city officials and stuff have been shilling for this thing for a long time, man. And it's crazy how hard they actually shill for this stuff, because we're talking about, I think it's something like $1 billion project or something crazy like that. It's enormous, and it's actually going to be right in front of where the Anti-Media headquarters office is, and not right in front, but like a block away, and it's going to be, a massive headache. But the biggest problem to me is that they used all these tax dollars to kind of, buy this stuff and invest in it or whatever. And then they're selling it off to these corporations, of which I'm guessing that these fools are going to have some kind of share, some major benefit from this deal, because otherwise they wouldn't be shilling for it so hard. I know something is going, something is up, but I haven't been able to, put a finger on it yet. But I kind of asked this question to Walter Block, and because I saw him at Libertopia. I went, I think it was Saturday, and I met up with Cassandra and Jason from the Free Thought Project and Matt, and we sat in on this talk from Walter Block, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's some kind of economist. And I kind of asked that question because that's one of the big problems that I see with privatization, is that all of these resources, and the perfect example is what happened in Greece. because technically what happened in Greece is it was privatization, right? Because they turned all the infrastructure over to Goldman Sachs. So, the problem I see is that they use all the taxpayer money. So basically, they're socializing the costs of all of this infrastructure and stuff,
right,
and then they're privatizing all the profits from it, and then these corporations basically just siphon the money.
And they have no investment in the community, and this is infrastructure they need to survive. So people that don't live there are getting the profits, so they don't give a crap. They'll do the very minimum and then they'll constantly lobby to get the standards lowered and lowered, and the roads will eventually get dangerous. And it's ridiculous. It's got to get to a different point in time where communities need to co-opt all infrastructure, policing included. We can do that, and EMS even. All of this stuff is stuff we all can agree we need. Why do we have to delegate that to these so-called governmental agencies? They don't need to be. They'd be better off if they were private. And then that way we can buy stock. Say like me and you could buy Chula Vista PD stock, and we had like 10,000 shares because we bought in right when they opened. I mean, wow, we could really affect change that way. Right now, what are we going to do? Vote out? We can't vote out anybody. What can we do?
Yeah, there's no vote on the police, man. I think sheriffs get elected, but cops don't. And cops are kind of just either hired or fired. They have a strong protection via the union, and they have a cozy relationship with the DAs and all that stuff. We did an article about that on the Anti-Media called "Why Police Shouldn't Investigate Themselves," which is pretty obvious. But we broke it down to a little more detailed, and we kind of showed that these cops have a very, very cozy relationship, man, and all the supposed checks and balances that are in place to keep these guys honest, the internal affairs and all that stuff. I mean, it's all very, very slanted towards letting the officers off, and 95% of the time they were getting off. And one of the points that we made is that it kind of also leads us back to Ferguson here, because looking at the sheer statistics of things, then in cases like Darren Wilson and Mike Brown, 95% of the time the cop gets off, man. So that just is another thing to keep in mind. I mean, it's all signs point to the verdict being not guilty because of the fact that the governor is already calling up the emergency procedures and stuff, and the National Guard. So it really seems like, to me, statistically speaking, the odds are pretty stacked. I mean, is there still a chance? Yes. But is he probably going to get off? Yeah, he probably will. Which is, again, why we have to,
There's still civil, and that may be called into play where they'll get some kind of something from the department. But again, that's just the taxpayers, and this guy's going to still, I don't know how he's going to be able to work in the community, but I'm sure he's going to still have some kind of job. But how else are you going to rein him in? We going to have a fight with the police? That's just ridiculous. So privatization sounds, I don't know, somewhat viable. I don't know how else we can do it except to co-opt these guys.
Yeah, man, and like you said, we gotta start, putting the all this infrastructure that was made with our money back into the control of the hands of the people, because the way it is now, it's either run bureaucratically through the government or sold to corporations, man. And I don't think either one of those ideas are very viable, because they're both kind of one and the same. Corporations kind of make up the funding for the government, and by that same token, the government provides the protections to the corporation legally and all that stuff. And in a way, that's definitely a form of welfare, right? So, those ideas, I think we need to start moving away from, and start moving back towards these spontaneous, more spontaneous type of businesses and groups that take over these functions of society, because the current institutions are basically failing us, right? policing is failing us, the schooling system is failing us, the healthcare system is failing us. There's obviously better ways of doing this stuff. We can take examples from places all over the world when we want to start talking about solutions. We could say, okay, well, how do they take care of healthcare in, let's say, Chile or whatever, and look at the different models that are going on and work from there. Because the stuff that we're dealing with now, man, it's horrible. I mean, we got Obamacare, we got healthcare costs rising exponentially, and taxes on healthcare rising exponentially. I mean, it's a horrible,
and it can be easily masked.
Model.
The problem with Obamacare, with making it mandatory for everybody, but then you can't really cross state lines for your medical care, and then you're forced to get it. And if you don't, they just sign you up anyway. And you know that any Social Security is going to get signed up anyway.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like a total obstruction of privacy and obstruction of choice. I mean,
so it's going to take 9 months.
it's like when we look at the drug war. It's kind of like the same idea. It's like, you're going to be forced into this thing, and if you don't get in line, you're going to get mowed down with fines and jail time and stuff like that. And that's basically what the war on drugs is. It's like, okay, there's drugs out there, and if you get caught with them, you're going to be in big trouble. But that brings us back to this whole election process, man, and where there can be positive results out of elections, is with stuff like Prop 47, man. And what it really is, it's not positive though. What it is rolling back the negative stuff, right? So when we passed Prop 47 here in California, which basically defelonized almost any drug charge, at least when it comes to possession and of use. So in California, you can get caught using cocaine, and you could have it in your car or whatever, and you're just going to be able to walk away with the ticket. So, that isn't a law that's putting more laws on the books. What that law is doing is taking laws away from the government. The government was able to arrest you for that. Now they're not able to. You know what I mean? So I think, in my opinion, the only good laws to pass, the only positive laws, are ones that roll government back, man, because government is what's creating all of these, situations, especially with the drug war and now with Obamacare. These are things that are compulsory. You have to abide by them, or you get hammered down by the state. In the drug war, you go to jail, or you go to prison, or you get tickets. In the healthcare world, you either get insurance that even if you can't afford it, or you pay the government. It's pretty messed up either way. It's these compulsory ideas that are so horrible. And like that guy was saying, and we talked about this the last show, that Gruder guy, that basically came out and said taxpayers are stupid. That's why we were able to trick them to buying into Obamacare. We have to trick people. Because
what do you mean trick? There was no vote.
Exactly. I mean, but they had to sell it to the public, though. They still had to sell it to the public.
Sell what? There's no vote. It's just going to get repealed now with the Senate being controlled now. It's going to be repealed, and now it's going to make this massive. Can you imagine what's going to happen when they try to scale this back now? They're going to have to go. We have to use this opportunity with the chaos to go, hey, the single payer's got to happen. Like, it just has to. You can still have private companies, by all means, just go for it. But it's got to be that there's going to be state-run, and I know it'll make it awful. I know it will. But it's better than what they have now, where you have mandatory coverage that, say you're appendix burst and you have Medi-Cal, and it covers you up to 20. You're going to go bankrupt. You know what I mean? Like, you can't pay if you can't pay for medical. How are you going to pay $20,000?
Yeah, man, it's such a backward way of doing things. I mean, in an ideal situation, there would be good ideas and good options, and people would go to them. And in an ideal situation, people would be trying to help out people that weren't able to afford that kind of stuff. But you know, in the way that the government has turned bad, I think in many ways also the culture has turned just as horrible, man. And like people always say, people get the government they deserve. In a way that's kind of true, but in a way, it's not, because we get fed all this propaganda from the left and right and from the corporate media or whatever. So, I mean, not only is it the government that's the problem, I think the culture that's out here, the culture that is mainstream right now, is also a big part of the problem. Because I mean, if you look at it, people are like infatuated with this Kim Kardashian stuff and all this, just mindless nonsense.
But they're not. It's just the media putting it out there. It's not like I'm going out and talking to my buddies about any of this stupid stuff going on. In fact, there's more people asking me now, what's really going on with this? What's really going on with that? If this escalates, are we going to have a war or a draft? These are the things that are really on the minds of people. Like this media stuff, the portrayal of us, this is all just a big illusion again. I think the distraction is that you actually think people are really into this stuff when it's such a tiny brain-dead zombie minority. Yeah, true, people walk around looking down at their cell phones all day, but when you talk to people, they're not. Maybe 1 in 10 of them are one of these, people that are into this stuff. So again, I think this is just like an illusion within an illusion in its own way.
Yeah, man, I think young people are starting to get what's going on. The generation that basically started the first generation to get most of its information from the internet, which is really a revolutionary technology, and it allows people to connect from all over the world. I mean, think about it. If it weren't for the internet, man, I probably would have never met you, man. And I wouldn't have met a lot of people that we work with now, and the anti-media would never have been even possible. It's changed everything. Everybody can communicate now. You can meet people from all over the world. People from all over the world can share ideas with you. I mean, this is the most exciting time when it comes to communication ever. And it's jumped like immensely in the past 100 years. Think about it, man. The telephone wasn't invented very long ago. And before that, it was like, you're basically sending messages on a sailboat and hoping that it crossed the ocean all right. So now it's like, dude, I could just drop a line to a guy in India or somebody in Russia or somebody in England, and it's just like 5 seconds max where they receive the message and get back to me. It's crazy. So that's why, that's one of the things that we have to do, and kind of brings us into this next story because, if we think about it, a year and a half ago, when this whole Syrian stuff started popping off, we were able to stop it in many ways, and thanks to the internet, we were able to put a stop to this whole Syrian invasion to take over Assad and all that stuff. But a year and a half later, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's because it was a change in tactics. I mean, when the propaganda came to us, it was in the form of, American journalists getting their heads chopped off and stuff like that. And then they're releasing these videos all over the place and telling people not to watch them. I mean, this is a total propaganda campaign. And that's how they got us this time, man. It was the propaganda. And they're able to trick people a lot easier, and we tried to stop it, but unfortunately it looks like these guys are trying to get us back fully into Iraq with ground troops and everything.
But who's fighting? That's the thing, is they can't do a full scope military action anymore, mostly because there's just not even really the budget for it. And it's all these like mercenary guys, and yeah, there's like a core of like 5 or 10 soldiers, 10,000 soldiers and such, and a lot of heavy hardware, but a lot of that stuff's even being used by contractors because they're not really they don't make the United States corporation liable, so they're on their own, they're private. So that's what's going on. They don't so much need public sentiment anymore. What they need to do is keep people distracted enough and happy and fat enough on the GMO foods. And it's what we got to go against. We got to tell people, hey, this lull before the storm. It's not like the storm's not coming. It might have been slowed down and they're keeping you happy, but it's still coming. And if we're not prepared for everything going on, if people aren't awake to what's going on and kind of understand what's going to come really soon, like we always say, it could happen next year, next month, 10 years from now. We don't know. But we know it's like such shaky ground now, and there's so many people not even preparing at all and acting as if this is going to continue on. And this is a recession. This is not a recession. We've been going down for like 18 months straight. It's the beginning of a depression.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I think in a lot of ways these guys are hyping up this whole tension with Russia. Whether it's just to gain favor for the military-industrial complex to start another massive military buildup for just fake reasons like they did during the Cold War, or whether they're actually going to build up to try to fight another huge war. This is the direction that they're sending us right now, man. And the way that they're treating Russia, the way that the dealings are going in Ukraine, how NATO's trying to get Ukraine to join up. I mean, this is something that's going to cause a serious rift. And I mean, we're already seeing the repercussions of it, right? We're seeing the BRICS nations start to become more tied together and strong together, and starting to make they're starting to make the dollar just a little bit less, preeminent.
Well, we're being offered up to the world stage essentially because me and your money will be cut in half in value if what they're all planning in collusion happens, which is BRICS. And then they can maybe conveniently kind of plan some kind of World War III thing too, which I hope to God doesn't happen. And the way to get off it really, Nick, is it's got to be alternative currency to the dollar now for everybody. Like if you have a bunch of cash sitting around, it should be divested into something else, anything else, and just do it, safely. That's all I can say. Even Bitcoin may be better, even though who knows what will happen if the internet had some kind of hiccup. But if our economy goes down, it's by design, and we got to work real hard to prevent that from happening. And honestly, breaking this TPP crap that they still have trying to go on still. Now it's, what is it, the TPPP or whatever? I don't even know what they added another P on there.
Yeah, man, it's just more of this whole getting rid of local control of things and just opening the door to these quasi-private, quasi-government organizations like, what was the one down in Guatemala, U.S. Fruit or whatever. I mean, these corporations have evolved into these giant monoliths, right? And it's kind of, this is the system that straddles the back of the population. And, when these guys come together to make their deals, this whole cronyism stuff, it leads us into these situations where we have this fight over this petrodollar, right? Now we're positioning over Ukraine, Syria, and it's all over this whole petrodollar battle because we're trying to cut Russia out of Europe. And I'm sure a lot of Europe is probably willing in this deal. So I mean, Russia, it's going to be this is the showdown of the last few decades, I think, and it's not being talked about enough, and people aren't opposing it that much because this time around the propaganda was so much better. I mean, they had the journalists with their heads cut off and stuff. I'm not saying that it wasn't didn't legitimately happen, but I'm just saying that it was definitely propagandized and used to gain much more support for the war than they had a year and a half ago, because now it was against the boogeyman terrorism, and it wasn't just against some rogue state. Because apparently the American public isn't going to let them just go and attack a rogue state. except for the fact that we're basically letting them get away with attacking Syria through the backside and under the guise of attacking ISIS. And the more time goes on, the more and more they hint at the fact that Assad is going to go down too sooner or later once we get done knocking out ISIS. The whole fact of the matter is that this pipeline that they've been trying to build for years, which is going to cut Russia largely out of Europe,
Right.
is what they're trying to build through Syria. That's why Assad has to go, and they need Ukraine because they need to shut the gas lines, because Russia's gas lines all go through Ukraine, so they need to use Ukraine to shut Russia's gas lines off so they can run, and then they run their pipelines up through Syria. I mean, this is a perfect geopolitical resource grab type of war.
It's pre-war. It's like economic war, and then the Saudis are also involved because they're lower. I mean, me and you have $2.99 gas right now. We haven't had that in 4 or 5 years. So it's helping us. It's making everyone all happy after the so-called election, and keeping them stupid and thinking their money's going far further. Even though gas prices have gone down, it hasn't made food prices go down. Did anyone notice that? Actually, they're still increasing. So this is just a little bubble just to get Russia on its knees before they go in. Once they go in, I'm sure that Saudi Arabia may get attacked. I have no idea, but it'll be a whole chain of events, man. It's a proxy war they want to drag into something bigger, and I'm not really sure the way we stop it, except that if they try to call for people to get involved in it in any way and say it's for national security or for anything like that, it's got to be staged, because if we're to believe we have I don't even know what we're at now, $875 billion a year official budget for defense, and everyone else is, I don't know, not even 1/10 of that. We know they can't touch us. And if we get touched, it's because, people on the inside are letting it happen, man. We just can't fall for this.
Yeah, man. And, unfortunately, the whole monetary system, because of the whole Bretton Woods agreement, is based on this stuff. It's based on the oil. It's based on the oil price. Saudi Arabia is a huge factor in that. And that's why we let them get away with wholesale slaughter and wholesale oppression and human rights abuses and stuff like that, because they're a part of this petrodollar. And see, the thing is if you look, especially at Libya and stuff, we weren't really going in there under moral causes. We were going in there under this economic stuff, this economic idea about the petrodollar to keep them from going into a gold currency. And then there's this news recently of ISIS picking up the gold currency and stuff. I mean, this is just a crazy turn of events, man. I just don't. It's just hard to imagine. Like,
those are going to be some collectible coins too. I'd try to grab some.
So, what do you think about the fact that these silver prices and gold prices are like way down right now?
I listen to V, the Guerrilla Economist, every once in a while, and when he gets super hyper about metals taking a nosedive, he always says, well, listen, they're going to cause like these tsunamis to happen, and then you're going to see the inevitable, crest, and then now we're coming back where the current's pulling it back, right? And so you have these artificial home prices that are about to plummet. You're going to see metals plummet. Metals may get down to where it's under $1,000 or maybe even 900, 800 for an ounce of gold, and silver will drop accordingly. And I'd definitely grab 1 ounce silver coins when they get down into that cheap price, because then what's going to happen is cash will be king. Cash will be king because you have liquidity, and it's going to tie into a drop in the stock market a little bit later, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months after. And there's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of cash and a lot of metals, and they're totally perfectly situated to cash in on the stock market when it's like dead in the water. I mean, it's happened before. It's like every 100 years, and then you, like you said, 40 years for a fiat system is as long as it can go. So we're there. Everything's all according to these long cycles that everyone knows about as long as they research it. But the average guy, paycheck to paycheck, it doesn't matter what he does. So just if you have something you can scroll away, do it. You'll see your wealth exponentially increase, and you'll actually be situated maybe to do okay in a really crazy time.
Yeah, man, because as this thing gets hyped up, the Russians are going to be more polarized with the Chinese, and you already see the tensions building. I mean, between the nations and stuff. I mean, it's looking a lot like it looked back during World War I, and I mean, it's something that we need to prepare for and try to prevent. I think otherwise, who knows? We don't need another war, man. We need to stop the ones that are already going. We don't need a new one. Thank you guys for tuning in. Catch you guys Friday with Levon.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.